Hello everybody, today we are going to do a summer garden tour. Now I did kind of wait a little bit late into the summer, so things aren't looking as best as possible. And I figured if I don't do it now, I'll probably never get to do it, at least this summer. So let's take a look inward. Now as you guys know, I don't have the largest of gardens, but we do grow quite some amount of plants, at least in the small garden space. In fact, if we take a step back, you can really see just how the garden is looking. I do plan on putting in a garden wall here to go along the trench side where the grass pretty much meets, as I pretty much think it'll add some interest in that area. Like, I think adding in a garden wall down there will really add in some interest. But up top here, guys, I do want to show you some plants like this oak tree that we put in ground pretty much this year. This is the Kindred Spirit oak tree. It is getting quite some tall. I also pruned that apple tree back a little bit so that it has room to grow above. I also put some rocks and some moss, and if you can see that the flooring to at least the garden ground, there is a ton of licorice fern growing in through here. Now the licorice fern, they're not really up right now because they usually wait for a good heavy rain or the fall season to make a reemergence. And every section is different, so some areas receive more water than others, where there's areas that are more dry, like this area where the licorice fern hasn't returned yet. Oh, this is epimedium. I do grow epimedium throughout the garden as well. You can see it back there too, and a little bit of hostas that I divided this year. So the hosta and then the epimedium. By the way, this is all one slope that I'm planting on here, with one of the main features being my first flame Japanese maple tree. In fact, there's not a lot going on here in this garden space. We do have a few hydrangeas that are putting on some color changes after the whites. I think this one's not one of those. But you can see we've got some hellebores. So this is one patch of hellebore. There's another patch of hellebore, but it's at the base. We've got a hemlock that's more of a dwarf. Oh, I think this is ostrich fern starting to make a reappearance because we did have a heavy rain. Now, a lot of people either dislike ostrich fern or they love it. It's kind of a weed in some people's garden. Right now, I'm just keeping mine maintained, so making sure it's in certain areas. Over here, we do have a Japanese maple tree by the name of Taylor's, planted in 2021. It is putting on some new growth, which just so happens to be pink. So a lot of people seen that pink tree video, which usually this all leaves out a vibrant pink, and it's usually one that you don't think exists, at least if you've never seen a pink tree before. There you go. Well, you can't see it that well. But anyhow, we do have some azaleas. We have a bit of autumn fern, which autumn fern puts on this bronzy color whenever it puts out new fronds. This is one that I pruned on because, or this is a hemlock I pruned on because my dog stepped on it and broke a branch. So I'm thinking of putting a basket around this, kind of similar to one I'm going to show you pretty soon here, just in order to protect it until it's able to get well established, or until at least build up this garden bed and make some sort of precautious or ways to prevent the dogs from stepping on that. Oh, so back here, this is licorice fern. So this is what I was saying. There's a ton of licorice fern in this area, and it usually comes up whenever it rains. So it rained quite some amount, and now we have licorice fern making a reappearance. And that's pretty much throughout the garden, along with the ostrich ferns. Now this one's growing nearby some liriope, which this liriope is in pretty much good amount of shade, preventing it from spreading too much, also preventing it from flowering as easily. So when I do see the flowers, it's kind of a surprise. They've got these little lavender looking flowers, and they're pretty adorable. That is my friend say hosta, and we have a jet stream hydrangea here. I believe this jet stream hydrangea was placed in ground recently, so it's not all that big, and it's supposed to get like this rich red color during the fall time. Oh, we have some more of these licorice fern making a reemergence here. One of my favorite ferns, this is going to be the crested fern. So it's got like this crested look to it, or the tips are, they're really twisted, and I love it. This one sits here. I think it's pretty drought tolerant because I don't really water it all that much. It just takes residual waters. Same with the fern back there, which I think might be a autumn fern. Now, one plant that's not doing well in this area is this azalea. I'm hoping it makes a return, but if not, we might have to replace it. Not sure exactly what happened to it, but it's just not as thick as the others, as you've seen previous in the video. So back here, this just so happens to be my Japanese maple tree, cat Sora. Cat Sora, it's a tree that leaves out a vibrant yellow color, and then eventually I think it goes colors of like yellow orange, at least in the fall time. It's hard to really tell when it's always different. Sometimes we get more green leaves, sometimes it changes to absolutely fantastic colors, sometimes more yellow than orange. Just depends on the year. I did add in a few Asiatic lilies. So this is one that's blooming. It's been blooming for some days now. It also has some more flowers that's about to pop open pretty soon here. I want to say our lilies start in April, and they end up working their way throughout the summer because we spread out the different varieties which flower at different times of the season. Like this one here, I can't remember the name to it, but it's more of an orange variety. I'm going to cut it back once the leaves all turn yellow because I want it to store up some of that energy, or collect some sunlight at least, so those bulbs are prepped for the next year. Over here, this is what I was talking about when I was saying about the cage and possibly caging that smaller hemlock. I put one of these baskets around it just because, again, my dogs step on these guys and they break so easily. But ever since I put this cage over top of it this year, it's definitely recovering. These aren't cheap plants. As you can see, it's like $67. So I would hate for this thing to be trampled and destroyed before it has a chance to really shine. So I might end up extending this cage as it gets bigger until it's no longer in danger of being easily broken. In fact, you may notice this little green tie here. This is actually tying my Ichioji branch to kind of open up a bit more. This is the Ichioji Japanese maple tree. As you can see, it has kind of a yellow colored leaf with a bit of orange towards the tips. A better example of that is on this branch here. Looks quite lovely. But the further down you go, you can see it gets a little bit more on the yellow side and then eventually to green. So more sunlight you give it, the more yellowy, orangish colors that will appear on the leaves. The more shade you give it, the more greenish or yellow color kind of appear. Okay. So, other than that, beneath this Japanese maple tree, we do have some not sour, but sweet bubblegum? No, silver bubblegum, heuchera, which is in full sun, and it's obviously frying a bit. Nearby, this fern, I think it's a sword fern, because I placed a lot of those in the garden. And you can see we have a bit of evergreen interest here as well. That's a dwarf plant. Let's walk and take a look at that. If I can see the name, I can show you. Or you know what? There's one over here with a tag. This is called Mount Vermont. So it's the Mount Vermont, and it's again a dwarf or small compact evergreen. Now these guys do spread very, very slowly. In fact, I've had it here for possibly 3 years now, and it's barely gone anywhere. In fact, the growth just goes inches at a time. It's so slow, but it provides that good evergreen interest, and it's a mounding plant. By the way, guys, this is no means a part shade area, as you can tell with the frying of the hostas and the frying of some of the ferns. This is full sun, but eventually it's going to go to part shade. So I do hope that some of these trees do pick up and pace and provide that shade that's necessary for a lot of these plants here. Oh, I found another hydrangea, because there's 2 different varieties of hydrangea placed within these areas. One being the quick fire hydrangea, and then we also have the Zinfandel hydrangea. But I believe that the Zinfandels just cap off the hydrangea row. This is just quick fire, then we have quick fire, and then we have another quick fire down there. But we did put a oak leaf hydrangea right here in between the plants, just to kind of sprout down. This is a munchkin oak leaf hydrangea, so it's not going to be overly large and take over the area. It's going to be low mounding, so not the largest of hydrangea or oak leaf hydrangea plants. One of my favorite plants for this area is this weeping spruce. I think it's a weeping spruce, Norway spruce, I think. I got it years ago and I never labeled it, so I don't know specifically what it is, but it does this thing where it carpets the ground in its growth. I need to keep it clean though, so that none of the needles die off on me. And it does smother out a lot of the weeds, but you can see one weed is growing through. I'm gonna have to pull that weed. But this is a good ground cover, and you can stake it to grow as tall as you want it to, and I kind of stopped staking it after that and let it just sprout down. It started off like yay high, made it come all the way up, and then it let it droop. I also imitated one of the nurseries, because they had theirs placed right next to a tree that provided part shade to their Norway weeping spruce. So I wanted to do similar to what they did. Since theirs was doing absolutely fantastic, I figured mine will do just the same. And by the way, this just so happens to be a grapevine Japanese maple tree. It's one that produces either really yellow colors in the fall with some splashes of red, or a lot of red and some splashes of pink to it, or not pink, but yellow to it. So, super interesting tree to really see. Ooh, there's a beetle on it. Underneath my grapevine maple, I do have a little quickfire. Now, little quickfire is just the dwarfed version of quickfire. So it's one that doesn't get as large as, I want to say 6 to 8 foot tall as the normal version does. I think this one stays relatively maybe 3 to 4 foot tall and around the same width. It does have an undering of lamb's ear. Now this is the Van Hollen's Van Hellenstein lambs here, known for not producing flowers. And that's kind of what I wanted here. I didn't want it to produce flowers and spread wildly. Oh, and then there's this drift of Dusty Miller that we started from seed. I did cut it back, hence all the debris behind it. I was gonna let that decompose in that area. It flowered, it did its thing, and now I'm letting it rejuvenate itself and produce a lot more of this lovely white foliage. Now, if you can see, here's where I started mulching earlier this week. I wanted to add in some wood chips. So we're not done, as you know, that whole area I just showed you guys doesn't have any new wood chips. So we need to add some further back. We just started over here and are working our way out. Another quick fire. We've got some deer fern here. I love deer fern. It's absolutely amazing. Puts on this chartreuse green sometimes when it's putting out that new growth, and then eventually it goes to a darker green color. So that's super nice. We've got some Virginia. I think this is the patch of Virginia we placed in ground last year. What is this? This is the pink dragonfly. So pink dragonfly elephant ear. We've got the, what version is this? This is spring fling. So there's two versions of Virginia here. Pink fling and pink dragonfly. And I thought that would be interesting to see these guys flower together during the springtime. And if you notice, this is right beneath a alpine fir. This is the Lasiocarpa alpine fir. It's not all that tall just yet, but I do plan on it getting taller. It is placed in a grouping of 3, so there's one back there, one here, and then another out in front. I'm also not worried about this area, as most of the plants that I put here are drought and shade tolerant. So Virginia does well in shade and dry areas, so that's a big bonus for you. I'm hoping that the needle cast will start providing mulch for me eventually throughout the years. Now, this is a Foxgloves plant. When I first put it in ground, it lost a lot of leaves, as well as the stems pretty much died back. The plant just about became half of what it was. And guys, I'm not gonna hide the ugly from you. This is a lupin that did well in the springtime, but obviously it's not doing well in the summertime. It just does not look good. It looks pretty ratty. I tried cutting it back. It put on some new growth, which ended up getting this white mold to the top of it, or I think powdery mildew. So it just looks ugly. I'm gonna cut it back again and see what happens. Maybe it'll do better further in the year, or hopefully it dies off. Right behind that lupin, there is a Foxgloves plant, and Foxgloves has like this lovely green-blue color to it. It's really unusual, and right now it's flowering. Usually you get these flowers in early spring, but we're getting some now. I'm not sure what happened here, but some of these rudbeckia, they toppled over. I think what I need to do is come through with some stakes and stake it up so it can hold up more right, similar to all the other Sahara rudbeckia that I've placed here. Which, by the way, I do have a volunteer patch of corn coming up here. And I was gonna remove them, but then I was like, you know what? Let's see what they do. Let's see how these perform, because they just made an emergence, like, I want to say a few weeks ago. So they haven't really gotten too tall. I think it's because they're not getting the nutrients that they're supposed to be getting, nor the water, because I decided, why water them if they come up on their own? Then we have another volunteer plant. This is a sunflower that hasn't flowered yet, so we don't know what it's going to be. But again, it's a volunteer, so we'll see. I will say one plant that's been really fun to watch grow up just so happens to be this Himalayan birch tree. I put this in ground when it was super small. And this is like just a couple years or maybe almost 3 years ago now. It was so small. And I just was like, okay, smack dab in the middle, put it in ground, watered it well. Haven't really watered it all that much. I mean, it receives residual waters, but yeah, this thing just takes off on its own. And it does get some caterpillars on it, which is always interesting to see. We did have the swallowtail on it. We've had these little yellow with black striped caterpillars on it before. Super interesting to see here and there. And it's right next to this coneflower patch that isn't doing that well. It's starting to flop over. I'm thinking I need to stake this really well because these bamboo stakes just aren't holding it. We're gonna have to put in some sort of middle staking, at least plan for that next year, as it's a little bit late, you know, to be doing that. They're pretty though. I think this is the purple coneflower, and then we have some green twister here as well. You can see. I'm gonna let them go to flower or go to seed and have the birds collect the seeds over fall time. So we just came from the west garden area, and then we have this little awful planter garden area. It receives a lot of sun. In fact, it pretty much fries everything here. I did place a weeping redbud tree here. I believe this is Cercis canadensis, Golden Falls. I really tried to add in some new plants here to kind of fill in the space. And again, they are new plants, so the area is not all that fulfilled. I believe these are the winter glow Virginia, because we put these in ground, I want to say sometime in winter time. We also divided a few plants. I think it was maybe 2 plants I divided into a bunch, and you can see one here now, another here, another here, right here, here, and I think one in the way back. So these all came from like 2 plants, and they've really spread out. Other than that, we do have a frying fern here. This is the Jurassic fern. It gets lovely yellow color in the springtime, and if you've watched one of my previous garden tours, you probably would have seen that there, where these guys appear like this yellowy orange copper color, which kind of brings interest for early spring, late winter. I think that's a western sword fern back there, possibly. We'll see. I see the tag. This guy is a champ. It's doing really well. Just says native ground cover. Let's see if I can pull it out. It's native to Pacific Northwest. It's the sword fern. And then off in this little corner, this is a little planting of straw flowers. You can hear the flower sound. It's like paper. Started them from seed along with the snapdragons you'll see in this area. There's some snapdragons back there as well. But let's move on to the other side, which just so happens to be beyond my stairway sun porch area. By the way, the sun porch does have so many windows, and I love it. I love it because I can see all of the Japanese maple trees, at least in the facility, as they change to their spring and fall colors. So the one directly below this window just so happens to be Koto no Ito. And Koto no Ito is one that doesn't really get all that wide, and it doesn't get all that tall either. It's kind of a slow grower and has these strap-like leaves that make kind of a airy appearance. It's also great at delivering part shade to some of these really sun-sensitive plants down here. I know the fern's doing well. We have a little bit of frying on the Francais hosta down there, and I think that's a autumn fern down there. You can see some daisies in the background there. We've got a peony. I think that's a Japanese peony. And then some more daisies out front. That's Valkyrie daisies. And getting a closer look at these Valkyrie daisies, they need to be cut back so they can reproduce flowers again. We'll probably do that in a coming video. You can see just how fried these look, but the ones that look good, this is what they're supposed to look like. Really frazzled and really fresh looking. And these daisies tend to be evergreen in my area, so they don't really go away. They just stay up. Let's see, further in, this is the Japanese peony I was talking about. It did well. It's producing seed heads. I'm feeling like I should cut them, but I kind of want to collect the seeds and see what happens. As the seed heads, they look quite unusual. I think this daisy could stand to be cut back. You can see the stems are a little bit weaker than the other, or we can stake this. But this is a May daisy. And the May daisies, they start out kind of a yellowy color, then they go to gradually this white color, which is kind of boring to me. I like the peachy yellow color that it originally starts with. Making our way around, you'll see a dwarf ginkgo that we usually talk about a lot. This is the American. We've got a drift of lamb's ear. I think this is the heron variety. And above it, there is this, I think this is a blue angel, possibly. It's either that or it's Taylor's. So I can't remember. I picked up one of the varieties. I think this was the Taylor's dwarf pine. So this has been here for 4 years, and you can really tell it didn't take off. It doesn't grow all that fast at all. I did put in ground a munchkin hydrangea here, which is being taken over by the, I want to say these are the red variety of crocosmia, because we have some orange variety here as well. And then there's some red in the back. Here's a bit of an up close on the clumping there. Oh my, I just looked down. That's a big foxglove plant growing there. Actually, it's growing throughout this area. These could be Dalmatian peach. Usually I grow those in this area and they reseed themselves. So we'll probably always have foxgloves. Oh my, another hidden gem. This is a snapdragon. I'm not sure what variety, but it's one of the bride's varieties. I see another here that's kind of flopped over. These really need to be staked or could do for some staking. Out front though, that hellebore, or not hellebore, but this, oh my gosh, I just broke it by accident. Yikes. But I was trying to say that heuchera fried. This is in full sun. I thought it would be able to handle it. Not really. I mean, it's still alive, but not really, guys. It's fried pretty badly. All we can do is cut back that foliage, and hopefully it produces a lot more foliage that will be nice and fresh for the fall time, until we get some shade from this dwarf pine that I thought would provide it for, or like a couple years in. I guess not, since it's such a slow grower. Headed further in, you'll see things like some hellebores. We've got some forest grass. I think that's the all gold variety. We've got another oak leaf hydrangea in the far back. There's a few heads of poppies back here. Then you'll see some ferns hidden amongst the plants, some more fried heuchera here and there that will eventually return to fresh colors. Then capping off at this back gate area or back fence area, we do have a hydrangea, which is underplanted with some Hananacloa. Look how lovely that is. This is Nico Blue. I usually try to give it that blue acidifier because I thought Nico Blue was only supposed to stay blue. This thing has turned pink one year, and I was like, oh, how disappointing. Then I found out I had to add soil acidifier to keep that blue color. Oh, I see something in amongst it. that I want to show you guys. It's kind of hidden. I think I put that back there years ago. This is a Japanese painted fern. This is before the plant became as big as it was, or as big as it is now. That Japanese painted fern used to show out and always was within sight, but now it's covered. Same with this fern here. This is the maiden fern. It's lovely. It's kind of got like this really unique look to it. And looks like I forgot to cut back the tulips this year because they produce seed heads, which we'll see if we get tulips this year. Maybe. This one's cracking open on its own. Maybe we'll release the seed pods here and let them spread in this area. If we get tulips, we get tulips. If not, we don't get tulips. Also, I've gotten questions on how do you keep weeds out of your garden. I get them when I see them. Like that one's probably been there for like a couple weeks and I haven't pulled it yet. I just haven't felt like doing it yet. Also, the mulch does help prevent it, and planting very heavily, that helps prevent weeds, so I don't have to do too much work. Providing some shade too, like this hemlock that provides really deep shade, definitely will help out. But back to the plants. Here's some more crocosmia. We've got some of this everlight grass here. That's pretty cool. I think it's supposed to be deciduous, so it goes down and dies back to the ground and eventually comes back up. But I do want to show you guys that in this area, we had a volunteer pumpkin come through. So it started somewhere down there and it ended up spreading all the way over here. I didn't plant this pumpkin, it just came through on its own. I did see a pumpkin start to form down here. I'm not sure if it's going to stick. There's another one coming through. This is a female flower. And then another female flower coming through. We've got a few male flowers. Those are the ones without the big bulbous ends to them. So you can see the big difference. Oh wow, I found another weed that probably has gone unnoticed. They usually don't do well here because of all the shade. So when they do show up, they don't grow too quickly and it gives me time to come and pluck them. I did add a ginkgo to this area. This is a more narrow grower. This is the gold spire ginkgo. So it's supposed to get like 6 foot wide and really tall, like 30 foot tall. But I'm guessing the weight or the width is actually going to cap out at about maybe 12 foot wide, honestly. Place 2024. So this is going to be one to follow. I was hoping it would grow really tall and then provide some shade for that Japanese maple tree back there. Although, I mean, we do get some shade. As you can see, the sun's still up and it's only on the top portion. Behind the ginkgo, I placed these plants from seed. These aren't weeds, but they kind of look weedy. Now, I can't remember the specific name. I think they're called echinops. I'm not 100% sure. But they do have like these lovely blue flowers to them. Bees love them, and they're perennial, so they keep coming back year after year. They're like floating balls of blue. Super interesting to see. But again, the bottom section looks really weedy. Then further back from the echinops, there is like this row of fine line buckthorn. And in front of it, which I'm thinking of removing the fine line buckthorn, we have this Chandler's Monterey cypress, planted 2022. So I'm thinking of removing the fine line buckthorn just to give this space to grow. It's growing relatively slowly. It's supposed to be more of a narrow grower. I'm just hoping it provides some shade for this area, just to make sure my grass stays a little bit on the green side. As if you can't tell, I don't really water it all that much during the summer, and it just about dies off. By the way, guys, there is another pumpkin here. This is another volunteer, so it came up on its own and started growing here. I think there's a female pumpkin starting to be produced on it. We have these snapdragons in the area, some more of the straw flowers that we grew from seed. And yeah. Oh, this is why I was kind of contemplating pulling out this pumpkin. It's covering up my lamb's ear here, and I don't know if it's a good thing. I just left it here just to see what happens. Maybe it won't smother out the lamb's ear. Maybe it will. If it starts to smother it out, I might have to remove the pumpkin. But I really want to see if I get some off of this volunteer pumpkin. But headed back and around the garden to the back side, we are kind of met with this redbud tree and varieties as well, with some forest grass. Then we have some rhubarb, I believe. Lovely rhubarb. It's been growing here for 4 years. It does its thing. Sometimes the snakes kind of stay around here and hide amongst the foliage. On the other side of it, not the best placement, but I do have a golden duchess. I put it here when this kind of died back for the winter time, not knowing that the foliage would just grow over top of it. Luckily, this is shade tolerant and it's doing absolutely fantastic. By the way, guys, when it comes to my pond, I am thinking of removing it and placing it in a new area that we're working on currently. We're gonna take this whole thing out. It just wasn't the best area to do it. So I stopped caring for it. I started to remove the water. I'm gonna put the fish somewhere, and I'm working on the area that it's going to go in. But for now, look at it right now. We do have a pine tree here. We've got some firs in the background there. This weeping cedar that's gonna come down, I believe. The pond does hold goldfish as well as koi fish, and a lot of, I think these are called water, oh, there's a koi fish. But anyways, I believe these are called water hyacinths. Now, they don't spread as well because the fish tend to chew on them, so they don't spread as quickly as they would normally without fish. And some people aren't gonna like this, but I'm gonna add grass to this pathway that leads further past my grill over there, because I hate the mud when it rains, and the grass really does hold in that water, or I mean, it does use a lot of it up, but at least it's something to really land on, and I don't have to pull so many weeds. I was gonna originally do flagstone pathway, but that's a lot of money to actually get well done. In fact, I'm thinking of, after the step area, this is where the flagstone's gonna go. So we're gonna put all the flagstone here and then put something in between it, and then also on the next step down. So right over here, once I remove all the weeds, we're gonna put the steps down and then put some put the flagstone, and eventually put in some sort of plants in between them. So I don't think it's gonna be a bad thing having the grass, at least in this section. So I can cut it off here, have the grass stop at this step, and then eventually move on to a ground cover. By the way, behind my grill, I think I singed some of the needles here from grilling with the grill underneath this by accident. Uh-oh, it's okay, it'll fix itself the next years. This is a Ijama Sanago Japanese maple tree. Behind it, there are some weeds as well as some hellebores, but the weeds are in the far back that we needed to get taken care of before they become a problem. In fact, this whole section after the Ijama Sanago is all an area that needs to be worked on. It's just filled with weeds. So if you stay along for the journey, you'll probably see this get fixed up and taken care of, because it's just terrible to look at. But I will say, we did get our trees in. So we have a redbud tree, we've got a pine tree, we've got an oak tree in the back there. That's a crimson spire. I believe we put in a rose bush, some ferns, because we started clearing out this area. We're making our way back, actually trying to work it back a bit. Back there, that's where I keep my compost. So I'm trying to compost the leaves and the debris that we cut back. It's surrounded again by weeds that eventually need to be pulled. We're putting in some shrubs here to kind of take over the area and make the weeds less of a problem. And here's a new area that we pretty much pulled all the weeds and put some plants in, like ferns. We've got some hellebores somewhere in here, and then we've got I believe these are sweet tea, possibly. No, not sweet tea. There's some sort of tiarella. I just can't remember the name. This is also where I keep my potted Japanese maple trees so that they can be provided by shade from this Sora Japanese maple tree, which is rather sized. Also, fair warning to people, if you grow tomatoes and you don't pick the tomatoes, tomatoes will reseed on their own in your garden and you'll probably have them forever. So unless you want tomatoes forever, go ahead and let it happen. If you don't let them fall to the ground and seed themselves around. And I want to say we had a heavy rain which kind of flopped over all of my snapdragons that were growing in this area. We had all these lovely pink snapdragons just everywhere, just spiked up. You can still see them, they're just flopped. And walking on the other side of where we were just at, you'll see we have a fire glow. We've got a Fuzumi pine. This is the fire glow. There's some coneflowers in this garden bed, and then we have I think 2 of these little firelight hydrangeas. So one here on that side and another on this side. In between, you'll probably see some landseer. We've got some hellebores here and there, and then our potted fruits. So we have strawberries as well as blueberries, and they do produce fruit, although the strawberries were already produced and we're probably not going to get any more for the season, but blueberries definitely happening. Here's that other side where the grill was at with the pathway. There's another little firelight hydrangea, which is going to colors of pink for the season from the white flowers. We've got a Tobiyoshio Japanese maple tree, and then as we pass through it, that's an Emperor One nearby a narrow growing pine tree, which this thing was placed in ground, I want to say 4 years ago, so you can see it's a slow grower, barely grows at all. In fact, this was placed in ground around the same year, 4 years ago. This is a Vanderwolf's pine. You can see really the difference. Gets way larger, way wider, a lot quicker. This one just took off. The others, they're slower to grow. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, this is an Atlas rose that's right next to this Tobiyoshio Japanese maple tree. It was placed in ground 3 years ago. It does its own thing. I do cut it back every now and then, which I don't do it properly. I'm gonna have to look into rose pruning and trying to get this thing looking a lot better than what it looks like now. But anyhow, let's get to the really bad sections of the garden. This is an area where calendula really just took over. I did take a trimmer and I trimmed back all the calendula just to have it do a reflush. So it's gonna reflush out soon, but I left all the brown or all the dying growth here, which doesn't look the best, at least for now, until the green growth comes up and hides it. So we did have some sunflowers come up. These are volunteers. They came up on their own. I didn't plant these. I'm gonna leave them alone. The birds will collect them and kind of waste them around the garden, which will have them come up next year as well. We've got some Saharia Rebecca down here. The poppies aren't looking so good. They're pretty much done and spent. We're gonna have to cut them back. These were grown from seed. There's a weed in there that needs to be pulled. Then we have another sunflower, which is a volunteer as well. Don't know what the variety is, but it does have a ton of seeds forming. We're gonna collect those and try and place them in ground next year. In this area, this is where my orange yellow, I believe, or no, not orange yellow, but Jetalo Japanese maple tree is at. It's kind of a lower to the ground grower, or a wider than tall grower. Glows kind of an orange color during the fall time. Just depends on the year. And then you can see we have a Bobo hydrangea right in front of it. Probably not the best place to place it, but the tree was a lot shorter then. I'm gonna try and prune it up so that it grows above the hydrangea rather than through it. And then you can see we have a single kaku, our Oshiobini, the fire glow in the back there. Those are our 3 interest trees. This is gonna go yellow. That's gonna go kind of on the orange side, and that one's gonna be a bright scarlet color for the fall. Then we have this area. This is where the new pond's gonna go. I'm gonna remove the old pond, put in the new pond, and it's gonna be a lot longer and a lot shorter. So it's only gonna be 3 foot deep rather than 5 foot deep. The fish will have plenty of space to swim around in, and I'll use a lot of that pond liner than wasting it. So that's one thing I didn't take into consideration when placing the pond to begin with. So while I was digging this pond, I'm trying to be careful not to damage the actual volunteer pumpkin that's growing in this area, which is pretty cool. We have so many volunteers this year, along with a volunteer, I think that's a tomato. Yikes, we got so many of those just growing everywhere. Now this section's not too bad, but this is where I have my ukigumo Japanese maple tree. And ukigumo, it does well. It does well in this area. It's kind of a part sun area, so yeah. Also, don't mind the backdrop. That's just my toolbox or tool bag, or I use it to do some things around the garden. But back to the garden. This area where the ukigumo is at, ukigumo has some hydrangea here. I believe this is the mountain hydrangea serrata. It either is pink or it's blue, depending on the soil acidity. So right now it's pink, meaning it's a bit on the alkaline side. We've got a France hosta, we've got some sword fern here, and a Fairy Lights Japanese maple tree, which everything's doing well here. And we got some pots back there from digging up the pond and trying to put the soil in other areas. Over here we've got the munchkin hydrangeas, and it's kind of interplanted with the hostas as well as the Jackfrass brunera. We've got more sword fern, different types of hostas. I think these are patriots right here. They come around and eventually, oh, by the way, this is beneath the Orange Dream Japanese maple tree. But they come around and you'll see things like the praying hands hostas, the David viburnum. We've got a bigger hosta there. This is where I'm propagating my mondo grass. By the way, it's so crazy how that Orange Dream is just taking off in that area. It's doing so well there. Then we have the ruby slippers in the background there, which kind of swooshes down here and meets with this curly fries hosta, which seems to get a little bit fried because it's in a bit too much sun. We've got Shadiva gold here. This is a Japanese maple tree. What year was it placed? 2021. Same with that Orange Dream, also 2021. More David viburnum. We've got some hellebores down here. This is now, I believe, ooh, I can't remember. Let's look. This is Sagara Nishiki, placed 2021. So you can tell that this area really started in 2021, and it's starting to really come into its own and become a garden area specifically. Another ruby slippers, which were then later capped off with, I believe, rising sun. So this is a Japonicon. No, is it a Japonicon? I can't remember. It's something, but rising sun. It's a Japanese maple tree. More viburnum. And then this is where I keep all of my little plants that I'm trying to nurse to health. The ones that I've gotten from on sale at all the different types of garden centers. So they are making recoveries. I got them at the clearance aisles. Although these ones here, I got these from Proven Winners Direct. These are the Legend of the Fall as well as Legend of the Small Father Gilla plants. But headed back to where that pond area is at, This is another messy area that has like weeds just growing in amongst it. We're gonna have to come through here and weed it out and then eventually place plants in their areas just so that it's well maintained. But this area contains things like shield fern, we've got some hostas, we've got hellebores, and again, weeds, hellebore, heuchera, ferns. And then this section is just almost all weeds, I believe. I was hoping that the foliage that falls from this teddy bear magnolia would shade out the weeds and prevent them from growing in the areas. It's doing well underneath itself, but it hasn't spread that direction yet. And I love teddy bear magnolia. It's one that's really compact grower, so it doesn't get wide. And it grows relatively slowly. It's been here for 4 years. I want to say in the 4 years that it's been growing here, it's only gotten about maybe 3 foot tall. So 3 foot taller than it originally was. So that's not much at all. Now, I noticed that all the pollinators, they love this ornamental onions. I think these are called millennial onions. You'll see bees just flock to them like crazy. And where our little destruction area, you'll see calendula patches that kind of just come up on their own. We've got a peony and an oak leaf hydrangea, which is doing not so well in the full sun. Boxwoods, I think the boxwoods are just on a repeat. They're there, then they're not there. So one's here, you come back, you see 2 more, along with this Villa Toronto Japanese maple tree. It's just a little bit disappointing in this area, you know. Not all that much going on besides weeds. By the way, all of this is south facing and it's also full sun. I put hostas here. These hostas aren't doing well in full sun, but they're surviving, and I'm gonna guess by time they get that shade, they're gonna be well established and they're gonna be able to really do well in this area, and I won't have to wait for it to first establish and then place the hostas for them to grow well. No, I'm just gonna do that right away. But we did put this Hemimillis gelina here to kind of shade this garden pathway here, or garden area where we got the hostas that are surrounded again by weeds, and also corn that kind of shows up on its own from previous years. Yeah. Oh, and then we have the Apollo maple tree that I placed here, I want to say 3 years ago now. It's doing well. I mean, it's growing. They're supposed to not love full sun. This is an absolutely full sun from morning all the way to sunset. This tree started putting on a lot of growth this year. So I think it followed that rule of first year you creep, second year, no wait, is it first year it doesn't do anything? First year sleeps, second year it creeps, third year it leaps. So this is on like 3rd year and it's leaping. Or actually, no, I think it's on its creep mode because this was placed in ground 2022 rather than 2021. I thought it was 2021. It's 2022. But alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed my small garden backyard tour, or just tour in general. As you can see, it has a lot of work left on it. It's actually embarrassing how many weeds that are still left. We just haven't had enough time to get to them, and it's a lot of work to do as a solo person. But see you guys in the next one. Peace.